Hello, fellow Wisconsinites. My name's Lori Groh, and welcome to the Wisconsin Wellness Podcast. We have some wonderful guests today. We have Brandon Wells from Shoreside Therapies.
Hi, Lori. Thanks for the invite. Really excited to be here.
We have Allie Devine as well from Shoreside Therapies, and she's a relationship counselor. Who else do you see?
Individuals with relationship issues, stress management, all sorts of different presenting concerns.
Thanks for being here. Kathleen Mack. Kathleen works with couples as well, and she's also a death doula. So welcome, Kathleen. And then we have Kristen Holmes. Kristen works with families, couples, and has a focus primarily in adoption and foster care. Thank you to all of you for coming today from Shoreside Therapies. We're going to talk about relationships today. We have 3 relationship questions, and to protect confidentiality, we do have a special AI voiceover. Any of you into AI?
Sounds terrifying, Lori.
It's really just me, but I plug my nose. Read them. All right, so we got our first question.
This past week, I've started to want to end my relationship. It started when my car broke down on the way to work, and I thought I could ask my partner to come and pick me up and take me to work. He picked me up, but said he wasn't going to take me to work because it would be a waste of his time and a waste of fuel as my work is 40 minutes from our house. So instead, I listened to him angrily rant the whole way home, saying this wouldn't have happened if I bought a new car like he told me to. The next day, I asked my partner if he wanted to come to my 12-week ultrasound with me, and he said, "No, I do not want to come." I cried the whole way there. Then I spoke to him, and he said he'd come to the next one, but it is only because I asked him to. We had an argument where he said I have a horrible memory and some other hurtful things, and I was crying and just taking it. Then he came over and hugged me when I started crying. We have a puppy, and sometimes he digs up the backyard, and my partner grabs the puppy by the scruff of the neck, shoves his face in the hole and swears at him, and then throws him backward. Sometimes the puppy will also get in my partner's face to sniff and lick him when he's lying down, and he tells the dog to stop, but he doesn't understand, so he then pushes the dog off the bed, and this has happened a few times now. I don't want my child growing up in this sort of environment. We had a good night yesterday with no arguing, and now I feel like there's hope. But we've been together for 4 years, and not much has changed. I feel like we will be really good for a while, but then something will happen, and he'll get angry and treat me badly again. How do I leave?
The main gist of this relationship question, her significant other doesn't really care too much about the baby and the ultrasound, not showing up to the ultrasound, physically aggressive to their little puppy, and isn't treating her very well from her perspective, right? So she's questioning whether she should stay or she should go, but her last question does indicate she wants help being able to leave. Any thoughts?
I could start. I think the other therapist would agree that there are some signs and symptoms of an abusive relationship, especially the on and off temperament. He comes back after maybe being upset and angry or even violent and makes up, right? And that's some quintessential abusive behavior. It sounds like she is trying to find an exit plan. And I think that would be the gist of trying to help her to see how to do that in the healthiest possible way. Working with a therapist, she could find a strategy to exit. If for some reason he decides that he wants to do therapy on his own, maybe they can find a pathway through. But right now it looks like the gist should be an exit plan from an abusive relationship.
Yeah, so those red flags, right? Being aggressive towards that puppy and then going through those abusive cycles.
Correct.
And she acknowledged in her question that it sounds like she has some self-awareness around the pattern and the cycle at hand, and that in the stage where he is apologetic and she starts to feel signs of hope about the relationship, sounds like she has some insight that leads into the next phase, which likely is more abusive or harmful behavior. It's important for her to work through finding some clarity around the direction she wants to move in. So it sounds like there's maybe some back and forth, understandably.
Yeah, with the hope coming up, right? And
Mhm.
do you all see that happening in relationships where somebody is wanting to exit and they'll get in that cycle of wanting to leave and feeling like it's the best thing, and then all of a sudden there's this glimmer of hope and they'll ride on that for a bit? See that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really common.
I also think it's quite often that people are usually staying way too long in unhealthy relationships and clinging to pieces of hope versus seeing the red flags, the signals, recognizing them for what they are, and making a more expedient exit from a relationship.
Do you think it's because of the need for clear proof, or like this idea of, I think this is what's happening, but I don't feel like I have enough evidence?
It's a lot of different things. I think in the context of an abusive relationship, self-doubt is profound, and usually that's the result of the dynamic at hand. I think another component that I see is people are tired, and the cycle that is really tumultuous or hostile or something happens is exhausting and stressful. And so when they come back to the stage of things are cool right now, it feels like relief. And
Right.
understandably, people aren't necessarily ready to make a big move when they're in that space.
I also think fear can be a factor in terms of why people stay in abusive type relationships for longer than might be healthy. So fear of their partner being reactive, fear of the uncertainty or the unknown. So a lot of times what I'm working with people on is just getting comfortable with the idea of the unknown, the uncertainty.
Yeah, it's almost as if that's what she's asking. If I have a clear way to do this, maybe I'm going to feel less fearful.
She's asking for permission.
Yeah.
Good point, Brandon. She asking for permission. I think in that dynamic, there's always the fear of abandonment too. Like abandoning either the person that is being abusive and them being their person, right? A person that knows that. I think that's also why we can struggle with the fear of the unknown. What if it gets worse? What if they don't change? But then I think ultimately too, there's a fear of abandonment. What does this look like for the future child in this instance, right? Been processing what she shared with us. The thing that comes to mind is that for her physical health, her mental health, her emotional health is very important, especially because she is growing and developing a child. We know what that looks like in children who are born, who are in high stress environments where there's abuse happening and the mother is experiencing higher levels of cortisol and things are going on, how that impacts the baby. So I think her safety and her pregnancy and the safety and being is priority here, and making sure that her exit plan has that as the priority. This is really what the goal of this is.
The physical aspect of what's going on for her body and what does that mean to the baby. You mentioned something else I wanted to circle back to, which was that feeling of somebody knows me so much that it can be one of the hardest things about ending a relationship, when you feel really known by someone, or even all my bad stuff is accepted by this person, right? There can be a bit of that as well. And so there's a loss in that. That person you've been with for a big chunk of time, 3 years, isn't going to be there anymore. Talking to somebody can help with processing that and building other relationships as well. Even if you're not ready to exit right now, connecting more with other people and letting yourself be known by other people that are close to you, so it doesn't feel like such a jump thinking of leaving that relationship.
If she were to do some of her own individual work, would be challenging some of the beliefs around the feeling of truly being accepted and known by this person, because it sounds like he's critical. Perhaps he knows and accepts her in the sense that he will stay in a relationship with her, but he's certainly doesn't sound like he's accepting of her flaws. It sounds like he's wanting to use them against her when he has the opportunity.
So if somebody's seen you in that negative lens, that can also be a positive for making that ending. All right. So should we go on to the next
I think it's also
Yeah,
important to put some information about a domestic violence or like crisis hotline here in case that's a resource that they need. Maybe they don't have a therapist or they don't have a friend or someone that trusts that they can go to.
definitely. For domestic abuse hotline, check our link in the show notes. My boyfriend got fired a few weeks ago and now spends most of his day just chilling at home. Lots of TV watching, going to sports games, and
Nice.
fitness classes. He's a bit more helpful around the house, but I still do most of the housework, cleaning, laundry, groceries, taking the garbage out. He has some ideas about jobs he wants to pursue, but no immediate plans. He is using his severance savings and family support to coast on by and hasn't made much effort in finding employment. He has enough money to cover his expenses and his portion of the rent, so it technically doesn't affect me. Despite this, I cannot help but feel so resentful and frustrated. I work from home full time, and it is just so frustrating to watch him lounge around, having the time of his life, while I'm putting in 8 to 12 hours a day. I can no longer access empathy when he complains about being sore or tired, which he does often. I can barely resist rolling my eyes when he brags about what a hard worker he is and about his discipline just because he works out. I work out and work a job and maintain our home. I hate feeling this way. I feel like a horrible partner. How can I reframe and tolerate this period of his unemployment without losing my mind and my attraction?
I don't see the problem.
Yeah, he's having a good time.
Yeah.
I think first validating that it's normal to be frustrated or to have some of these emotions come up when there's a big change in your relationship, particularly in terms of like division of labor, income disparity, stuff like that. I think it is normal to have feelings of frustration or resentment. When that happens, the first step is to validate that it's a really normal thing to feel that way when a big change happens in your relationship.
The guilt and paying attention to that first is always a good thing. Once that's eliminated, you can deal with the actual issue you're experiencing.
Anger and frustration, they're valid and they're real emotion. And I also wonder what else is underneath that emotion, like what's coming up for her, whether it's exhaustion from her work-life balance or the fact that she's carrying a lot on her shoulders. Women, we tend to take those things on too. And maybe even she sounds like she has a lot of insight in herself and doing some awareness work with you. What is it that has bothered this? What is causing me to be frustrated and angry? Because I think that's a huge part in relationships is to really focus on that external, like the thing that's making us angry, and then we get stuck in the weeds. So I wonder what else is coming up to her too. And self-care, if you're working 8 to 12-hour days and you're working from home, you need to make sure that you're also getting some time for yourself outside of the house or finding something that you feel like is relaxing, but also fills you up. It's not just about dissociating and disconnecting from a little bit, though you might need to do that. But finding something outside of the house that is hers or theirs, that they can do that for themselves.
Yeah, Kristen, I think that's great advice because resentment, to me, it's always more useful to think about what resentment is. And I think of it as it's really feeling envious of someone. Like, I want what they have going on. And that's probably why that's been so difficult. She's working, sounds like up to 12 hours a day, and she wants to sit there for a little bit. So that's a great point to go into. What do you actually need during this time? Maybe it is for him to do some more stuff for sure. I can't do the dishes tonight because I'm going to yoga. Hope you can help me out by doing them by the time I get home. Thanks, sweetie. Goodbye.
Yeah, I think another way to look at resentment is like this feeling of being wronged by somebody. I think the best way through resentment is to look at your own role in the situation. And it sounds like where she has control, because you can't control the timeline that he gets a job or what he does, but she can control what she's taking on. And she could set some personal boundaries about how much she's doing around the house. She doesn't need to be the person taking out the garbage, doing the dishes. Maybe she's not even giving him the opportunity to do that.
To
Right,
piggyback
right.
off of Allie, I agree with a lot of what you just said, Allie. We are responsible for our own resentment within relationships. Clearly, she needs something and more from him. It's this kind of delicate dance of figuring out what is it what do you actually need? Do you need to ask directly for more help or a more fair division of labor in the household? Ideally, he would be willing to do that. Obviously, we don't know. But then I think after that, it's her controlling her controls. So perhaps working in a space outside of the home a couple of days a week so she doesn't have to see his leisure and ability to exercise. But ultimately, in relationship, it's not our job to tell someone how to function in their life. I don't think that taking time off while you're getting severance is inherently wrong. And I don't think it's fair to project a timeline onto another person. These are my personal feelings about relationships. Doesn't mean you can't have feelings about them, but managing resentment is recognizing this is my discomfort and I have to own that versus projecting it onto him and expecting him to accommodate the way that she would like this to happen, since it's not affecting her directly in terms of finances.
I also sensed a little bit of fear and anxiety on her part that maybe she is a little nervous that he hasn't taken the job search or trying to find something as seriously as maybe she would, right? So maybe she's anxious and nervous about what the future holds for her. And that's manifesting in things like resentment and jealousy. So I told clients that, hey, jealousy, there aren't any wrong or bad emotions, right? They're all serve some type of function. So if the jealousy, if we turn that around and we say, hey, it's okay to be jealous. Jealousy just says, I want something that somebody else has, and it's important to me. Sometimes you can use that as a motivator to change your lifestyle or to work harder. So jealousy doesn't necessarily have to be this green-eyed monster that people talk about. If we can flip that around, people will, whether it's shame is telling us, hey, maybe I shouldn't engage in this behavior. So people look at it, emotions as right or wrong or bad or good, when really they're functional in turn, trying to tell us something, right? So if maybe she's willing to look at it that way, she makes some changes in her life and then resentment sets in.
Right. What always happens after a conversation that's based on this equity situation is like the actual keeping up with the home stuff where, okay, I'm going to let my partner take on these things down the counters at all ever. So if that's their job and it's instead of it being daily or after every meal, it's one time a month, that's usually that next step. So if that's part of what is going on, then there probably does need to be more of a decision to do couples work together, figure that out together. But for this first portion, I think those are all really good ideas as far as focusing in on what you can control, looking at yourself and self-care, and also what you actually want for your life. As there's something happening here where you're not necessarily feeling aligned with what's going on. We got one more question.
I'm not really sure what to say here. I definitely know that he thinks I'm stupid. But I've seen the messages to this one girl. He thinks I can't read or understand Spanish, but he is very wrong. He tried so hard to hide them on his phone. I already confronted him once when I seen him texting her in front of me. But I've seen the newest ones, and they're so much worse. I'm sick to my stomach because I've been nothing but a good wife. I've been nothing but nice and kind. Him? Ever since I caught him the first time, he's been off and acting way too fucking nice. What is my next move here?
All right, so it looks like she's caught him via texting. She's directly asking what her next move would be. So anyone have any thoughts on what she should do?
It sounds like this person could benefit from confronting their partner with this information if they haven't done that already. Certainly getting it out in the open that you're aware of this. I'm not sure if they had that kind of confrontation of what they found. yet. So that seems like the first step.
But it also sounds like she said this isn't the first time. This is repetitive behavior. And we want to be careful that she doesn't feel like she's being gaslit, that he keeps telling her that she doesn't understand what's going on here. That's part of an abusive behavior as well. So I think this is all predicated on her question is, what's my next step? It depends. What do you want to do? Do you want to continue to stay in the relationship? Do you want to work through this with a counselor? Do you want to make sure that he gets help? What are the things that would lead you to want to continue this relationship or exit this relationship in a healthy way?
But you're right. Like there is clearly some hints of gaslighting, and that seems pretty intentional. So there's something where he's in the middle of it, whatever it is. He's in the middle of it. And I just want to also point out when someone's in the middle of a situation like this, they're going to act in ways that might not necessarily be aligned with how they are in a typical situation. You'll tend to see more adolescent type behaviors when there is an affair going on, like sneaking out, hiding, writing in a different language. That all of that stuff is really that adolescent type mindset.
But there's also a lack of respect here. He's doing it in front of her while she's there. So either he wants to get caught, right? Or he doesn't have much regard for her. So we have to take that in consideration as well.
Any other thoughts?
Without intervention, past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. And maybe that's obvious to her.
Right.
But I think also sometimes in relationships, it isn't obvious because it's not as clear when we're in it. And so if she can accept that, at least that clarifies there's two directions. One is leaving and one is getting help of some kind. And it sounds like she's not wanting to tolerate the status quo.
Right.
The most important first step is that their partner would need to be willing to be honest about what's going on in order for any therapeutic intervention to be effective. And so keeping that in mind when considering the option of repair is that honesty is no for that kind of work and rebuilding trust.
That's a good point. Like if she wants to work on the relationship piece, that is going to be an important factor.
It sounds like work for herself would be a good next step in general, because there's a lot that comes up with infidelity. And especially when you're the person that discovers that's happening, there's a lot of loss and complex things going on inside of you. Having support individually would be a good next step for her so she can get all that out in a safe space and have someone else that's able to hold that space for her and not necessarily jump in and try to problem solve or anything like that, just to allow her to get processed through whatever is going on inside of her. And do we talk about getting help and repairing, or do I go?
I think that's a good point of taking that time first to figure that out for herself potentially versus doing anything with the relationship. Maybe she doesn't necessarily want it, but doesn't know what to do. So any type of therapy process would probably be beneficial for that, of sorting some of that out. Maybe even giving herself like a loose timeline that makes sense for her. Because the other thing can happen is the cycle of it. Okay, go ahead, Allie.
I honestly forgot what I was going to say.
All right, that's fine because we can be done. Thank you all for being here today.
Thanks for inviting me.
And we will hopefully do it again, and we'll get some of the glitches out, and then it'll be even better.
Perfect.
Love to do it again.
Take care.
And maybe it
Go
won't.
ahead.
Maybe it won't be every guy's the worst guy in the world. Yeah, it seems a little slanted that way. You're just cherry picking that every guy is the worst.
Yep, that's my worldview. Or you can have some of your buddies doing it. Have them send in some stuff.
They'll just probably call in and say I'm the worst.
Let's have Davina call in.
This past week, I've started to get cold feet in regard to my relationship. It started when my car broke down on the way to work, and I thought I could ask my partner to come and pick me up and take me to work. He picked me up, but said he wasn't going to take me to work because it would be a waste of his time and a waste of fuel, as my work is 40 minutes from our house. So instead, I listened to him angrily rant the whole way home, saying this wouldn't have happened if I bought a new car like he told me to. The next day, after my car broke down, I asked my partner if he wanted to come to my 12-week ultrasound with me, and he said, "Unfortunately, I do not want to come." I cried on the drive there. Then I spoke to him, and he said he'd come to the next one, but only because I asked him to. I don't want my child growing up in this sort of environment. We had a good night yesterday with no arguing, and now I feel like there's hope. But we've been together for 4 years and not much has changed. I feel like we will be good for a while, but then something will happen, and he'll get angry and treat me badly again. I'm not sure how to go about leaving.